this is Lauren with Lauren Watkins Art, and today I am doing an art studio tour, so that's why you're seeing my face and not just my hands. So if you want to see more of how I designed my studio for a small space and how I made it highly functional, then keep watching. So to get an understanding of why my studio is designed the way it is, we need to go to the beginning. So in the summer of 2020, my husband finished his schooling and we moved to a new state for his job. When we moved, we purchased a house and we had to do some construction on it to make it work for our family. In particular, we needed to adjust our loft. So our loft was this big open space upstairs and we needed to make it a bedroom, a full bathroom, and we needed to make it an art studio. So this is the basic floor plan of what it looks like. It was very, very open. And what we decided to do was tear out the closets. We were going to frame in the doorway to the bedroom kind of at an angle from the stairs to the bathroom and angle it that way. And then we were going to frame in the half wall. That way the bedroom was separate and it had a lot of privacy. And then the area where the closets are and where the railing and stairs are, it was going to become the art studio. So 3 days after we moved in, we started demoing the house. And this is what it looked like when we first moved in. You can see the wall of closets, the storage spots up above, and the angled ceiling we had to work with in the studio space. Then we tore it all out. We tore out the doors, the framing that supported the doors so we could open this up and use that wall space for the studio. Then we framed in the doorway for the bedroom and we framed in the half wall. We also had to do a lot of electrical because there wasn't any electrical outlets over in that half of the loft, and there wasn't any light fixtures on that other half of the loft. All of that was going to be framed into the bedroom. So we had to tweak and adjust that. We did decide to do kind of a window in the bedroom, and it has glass on it when it's all finished. But we wanted to have that room be open and have like a larger feel to it. So you can open your curtains and have a lot of natural light pouring in, or you can close it off and have privacy. So that's something that we ended up designing to do. And here's what it looks like when it's open. So getting back into the studio, what we ended up doing was we did all of the sheetrock and then we had to mud and sand it. And if you've ever had to do construction, you know how messy the mud and sanding stage is. But it's so worth it because then everything looks gorgeous when it's all painted. And once we painted it, we laid the vinyl flooring, we did the trim, and we wrapped the vent and the beams that were running across the ceiling in this kind of burnt cedar. We also hung our like industrial chandelier thing that was in the studio, and it looked gorgeous, and I was so glad we did all of that work. Once all the finishing work was done, I had to finalize how I was going to lay out my studio, and it was this weird diamond shape. I had a bedroom doors, I had the bathroom door, I had the stairs, and then I had a whole bunch of railings. So I was really only left with one wall to put my dressers, my shelves, my tabletop, all of that against. I decided to kind of maximize the space as much as I could by having a tabletop that ran the whole length from the vent over to the closet wall, right where it touches the railing. But I couldn't let it sit out too far because it would take up too much of the floor space in this studio since it's quite small. So I decided I was going to do kind of a hybrid. Instead of one tabletop that ran all the way across, we decided to split it and have one sit a little bit lower and sit out a little bit further. So it's about 6 to 8 inches deeper than the other ones. I also had to go to IKEA and see what dressers were available to turn into storage. And this is what we had, or what we could find, because COVID, IKEA was very limited on options. But it ended up working out. These ones sit quite a bit higher, and so they can make it a standing desk if I want. And I can hold a lot of supplies in these drawers. And then I was able to get a cart that fit under the tabletop. So here we are making the tabletops And here's what it looked like installed with the cart. And after that was put in, then we had to do the shelving. And part of the reason why I didn't want all of the countertop to sit out quite as far is one, it will take up floor space, but two, it will make it even harder to access the shelves that are above the desk. But we installed the shelves. We ended up adding an extra shelf in the middle between the two shallow shelving units. But I really, really love how it turned out, and it's super, super functional. And I focused when I was putting it all together to have all the supplies that I use the most right next to me. The other thing we ended up doing was just kind of tucking my easel in the corner. Now, the railing for my studio just barely got installed, and so some of the finishing work around the railing isn't done yet. So let's talk about this base area quick. So this is my main working area. This middle table is what you see all the time when I'm filming. But I have my 2 sets of drawers off to the side, and these are obviously for storage. These are just IKEA cabinets we bought. It was during the pandemic, and so our options were kind of limited. But then my husband built kind of like a tabletop for all of them. And then this middle section is my main working desk. It sits just a little bit lower, but it's still a pretty high desk because what it allows me to do is use underneath it for storage. So I have a cart that I'll show you later that pulls it out. So if I need more desk space or working space or anything like that, I can pull this cart out and pull it to the side. And I don't know if you can tell right there, there's a little gap between the cabinet and the wall, and there's one on the other side. There's about a 4-inch or 5-inch gap, and I use that to store all my big sheets of paper, drawing boards, all of that, and those kind of slide behind these cabinets and are out of the way. But if I need them, I can get them. There's things that I don't use all the time, but I use them enough that I don't want them to be stored somewhere far away. Then just trash can, I have some things that I use a lot on the cart, and then my drafting chair. This sits up really high since this work desk is higher than a normal desk. It can kind of double as a standing desk, or I can sit on this drafting chair and then I can just work from there. So that is my main kind of work desk space. I have my binder, pencil sharpener, and then some boards off to the side. So if we pan up a little bit, you can see how I've utilized height, because this studio space has an angled ceiling, but it does go pretty high. So I want to maximize my ability to store supplies by utilizing in wall space. So my husband built narrow shelves that hold my jars, and then I have this kind of shelf in the middle. And what this does is I can store all the things I use the most regularly. Then I've got a couple other shelves, with the top shelf being the things I don't use very often. I can easily grab things from this middle shelf and lower. Top shelf, it just depends on the things. Sometimes I have to get a step stool. So these are the narrow shelves that my husband built. And I love them because they don't take up much wall space or like counter space, but they make it easy for me to grab like all of my Hydrus watercolors, all my inks, all that kind of stuff. So I use these to store, since I have so many bottles, I use these off to the side to store all of those kinds of bottles, my brush show, inks, Hydrus watercolors, all of that. So I've got my shelf here that holds my go-to items. So my pencils, scissors, spray bottles, rubbing alcohol, all the things that I grab a lot. I have my boom arm for my camera, and I can adjust the length and the angle in which it sits. I've got these kind of portable LED lights, and these ones just clamp on, and I use these to help adjust any lighting on my desk. Or I can take them off and I can run them and hook them to my easel. So if I need lighting on my easel, I can move them pretty easily over there. My desk space is, for this main working desk, is just under 3 feet deep, and then it's 3 feet and 8 inches wide. And so it's a really good sized space to work. I can usually have my art supplies and my paper on here. But if I need more space, I have some carts I can show you in a little bit that I use to help extend out my working space. So voiceover Lauren is jumping back in because I found a bunch of my videos that I had recorded for this were corrupted. But I did want to point out the right side of my desk. It basically mirrors the left, which I showed you earlier, but I wanted to show the hole in the tabletop. That allows us to direct wires from the plugs down behind the cabinets up through to the top of the table and vice versa to help reduce the amount of wires and everything kind of feeding through. And then I also wanted to point out these lights that run under the shelves. These are like tape LED lights that come in a roll, and I just taped them to the underside of the shelf to help with any shadows created by the shelving. Now let's talk about the two full-length shelves. So this first shelf holds things that I use quite frequently, but are too big to fit anywhere else. So like my water jugs and my sprays, things like that. It also holds most of my pastels. So the dark boxes, those black ones that are all stacked on the far right side, are my Terry Ludwig pastels. And then next to it in the plastic containers are my Mount Vision pastels. Then we have my Schminke, my Mangayo Gallery, and my Unison sets that are stacked up above it. These sets only have like 30 to 60 pastels, so they're a little bit smaller. Then if we move across, we've got the basket with all my sprays and varnishes. We also have my boxes that hold my blending tools, my pan pastels. My Sennelier sets are those two black boxes. And then in the white basket, it is my Townsend pastels and my Rembrandt pastels that I got in tiny sets, and I have a whole bunch of boxes of those, and so they're all kind of stacked up in there, and then some notebooks off to the side. So next up is the top shelf, and this is things that I want in my studio, but I don't use them as often. So things like acrylic paint, my laminator, bookbinding tools for when I make my own sketchbooks, extra printer paper, extra teaching supplies, my tabletop easel, things like that. So I want them in my studio because I use them several times a year, but I don't get into them all the time. So let's go over what's in the drawers. This top drawer is my office supplies. So highlighters, pencils, pens, staplers, that kind of stuff. That's all in there. Not really art related, so we're just going to move on past that to the second drawer, which is my watercolor supplies. So here is my watercolor drawer, and it is very full, as you can tell. I've got my watercolor palettes over on this side, and I can just grab which palette I want. I actually have 3 of the same palettes, these silver Magello palettes. I love them. They are probably my favorite plastic palette I have. And I have one for Daniel Smith, M. Graham, and then I have one that I can just use for whatever I'm doing, and I'll squeeze out fresh paint into it. So if I need to create a custom color palette for a series of paintings I'm doing, I can use that palette. So I have these over here. I have my teaching palette. You've probably seen it in a lot of my videos. I use this one a lot for teaching, and then I have my gouache right here. And then I have a little tiny porcelain palette. I love using porcelain palettes, but they're not always the most practical when you are using a lot of colors and things like that, or mixing a lot of colors. So I just have one little one. And then I have a travel palette, and then this was my Mission Gold palette. When I'm done with my Mission Gold paints, I probably will donate this palette, just because I don't use my Mission Gold paints as much. They're more of just like extra teaching paints I use, but I still want to keep the palette because there is quite a bit of paint left in there. And then I move over, and this is kind of my section with all of my teaching supplies and kits. So my teaching brushes, my like salt, pencil, eraser, tape, things that I need to throw into my kit when I am teaching a watercolor class. I keep it in here when it's not in my bag, my teaching bag. So over on this side, I have my trays, and this is where I hold all of my tubes of paint. I have a tray on the very top that holds all of my masking fluids and erasers, rubber eraser thing for the masking fluid, pencil sharpeners, all that kind of stuff. And then I just have trays of paints. And I have mine organized by brand, but I can just grab the tray I want, put it on my desk, and then I can put anything extra back in and just stack it up. I have one tray for M-Gram. I have one tray for mix. Underneath is my Daniel Smith tray, and underneath my M-Gram is my gouache tray. So I can easily just pull out what I need and put it back. I can also take this tray and put it on top of my palettes if I need, and keep this pretty open. And then I store my really nice watercolor paintbrushes in this kind of folder thing, and I just tuck this on the side right there. So that is how I have my watercolors organized. So on the second to last drawer, I have a bunch of my test prints. So when I am selling prints, I will order a test to make sure it looks all right. And then if it does, then I will post it up, and then I will have those prints drop shipped from my printer. I get my prints made at Finer Works, and they do a beautiful job. And this is just my collection of test ones I had created. And then for the bottom drawer, nothing too exciting. It is just all of my filming gear, extra cords, extra tripods, things like that. So in this drawer, I have my watercolor papers and my sketchbooks. So I have a stack of sketchbooks over here. I have my pre-cut, rough pressed watercolor paper stacked nicely in the side. I actually use this paper quite a bit for testing ideas, things like that. Then I have some of my large sketchbooks stacked over here. And then I've got my really inexpensive watercolor papers that I use for testing or for classes. So I've got Canson XL paper, I've got my Strathmore 400 paper, things like that. And then over on this side, I have my expensive papers like this Canson one, the Canson Heritage paper, and then my Arches paper. And then I have a big block of Arches underneath it all. I don't use that size of watercolor very often, so it's just kind of at the bottom. Again, if I have really big sheets of watercolor paper, they're stored in a file folder behind this cabinet, and they're just compressed and stacked kind of vertically. And then I have a big roll of watercolor paper that is stored under my bed because I only pull that out probably twice a year. So here is my second drawer down, my pastel paper drawer. So I have all of my pastel papers in here, and then I have some drawing papers. In this stack, I have my Canson Mi-Teintes paper, I have pastel matte paper, art board, I have UArt paper. Over here I have drawing pads, so Bristol board, all of that kind of stuff. And then I have my pastel sketchbooks. In the middle, I have some extra sheets of glassine paper in case I need to protect my hand while I'm working. And then I have some scrap sheets of UArt paper that are kind of unusual sizes. That way I can use it for swatching colors if I get a new product in, or if I want to do a little mini picture. I do have a couple big pieces of UArt at the very, very bottom, kind of underneath everything. But usually my big sheets of UArt paper are stored behind the cabinets, kind of in a file folder that I talked about earlier. So this drawer is my pencil drawer for the most part. So I have all my pastel pencils over here. I have my Gioconda, my Faber-Castell, Derwent, and my Caran d'Ache pastels, or pastel pencils on the bottom. Then in the back are my supplies I don't use very often. These are my watercolor pencils, and then my open stock pencils to replace ones that are almost out in my kits. These two boxes are of pastels. This is my Jack Richardson pastels, and then this one is just a bunch of random small scrap ones I have from when I first started in pastel work. And then over on this side is traditional color pencils. So I have my Derwent Lightfast kit. I have my Polychromos pencils, Prismacolor pencils. I even have my Crayola pencils over here. So this is my pencil drawer. I get into this drawer all the time, so I really like having it right next to where I'm working. And so I can just grab the kit I want. So for my bottom drawer over here, I have all of my oil paints and palettes and canvases. So you can see my bag of oil paints that I have and all my supplies associated with that, and then any big palettes I have. So I even have like watercolor palettes, things like that. I don't get into this drawer very often unless I need a specific palette or in the off chance that I am using oil paints, which hasn't happened for a long time. So this is that drawer. So here is a look at my easel space, and you can see that it's kind of tucked next to the railings and the stairs, and that it looks down into the living room. So it's really important that this, most of the time, doesn't look too chaotic or messy since everyone sees it when they walk in. But normally this is what it looks like. I've got my easel kind of tucked in the corner. I've got some art boards off to this side. And then I have a basket that holds extra rags, aprons, things like that. Just so I can help keep my studio clean. And then I've got my art cart. And this art cart is a little different than the ones you typically see in studio tours. It's quite a bit longer. I don't know if it's a full 2 times the length of the ones that Michael's usually sells, though I did get this at Michael's. This is like 1.5 times longer, and it holds so much more, and it functions better for a studio space, or at least what I need it to do. So in my cart, I have my clamps and extra long handled paintbrushes kind of sitting inside under the desktop area. And then underneath I have extra paper towels. I have extra jars, gesso, things that I usually use by my easel over there. So here is what my easel setup looks like when I am doing a big project and I need a lot of counter space. So that art cart that was underneath my desk, I can pull it out and kind of angle it next to my easel, and then I can have the other cart next to the easel as well. And that gives me almost like a U-shaped working space, so I can usually hold like all of my pastels or my watercolor supplies on one cart, and then my reference photo brushes or something like that over on this side, or however I'm working. This is usually how I have it set up. And I love this setup because it is so flexible with what I'm working on and how I'm trying to function, but it doesn't have to stay that way permanently. So I can have this set up and paint away and have lots of fun with it and not stress, and still have quite a bit of floor space in my studio. It doesn't affect like functionality of the other areas of my studio, but this can get tucked away. My easel can move back to the side. The art cart can kind of get pushed to the side. And then I have a very open space again. And I love that functionality of this setup for having a small studio. So I thought I'd show you different examples of configurations I have had over the past 1.5 years in my studio. So you can see this one, I have my drafting chair over on the easel so I can sit and paint. I have my pastels on the large cart off to the side. You can't see it in this picture, but that white cart is where I would stick my iPad and use it as a reference. Obviously, I switched out that cart to get a different one. Sometimes if I have a lot of projects going on, especially in the wintertime, I will have a project going on the big cart, I'll have something on the easel, and I'll have something on my desk. So, and this was taken during a busy time of year, and I had something going on just on my cart until I finished up a project. Sometimes I do a U configuration over on my desk where I'll have both carts off to the side. This is really helpful if I'm working on a big painting and it takes up so much space I don't have enough room for like my art supplies. And sometimes I only have one cart next to me if I only need a little bit of space. Again, you can see with the doctor picture I have that I have kind of that U-shaped configuration going on since it takes up so much of my working space. But really, really dynamic. and flexible in how I set up the studio, and I have loved having this flexibility and mobility. So that is it for my studio tour today. If you have stuck around this long, thank you so much. This isn't my normal video and it feels a little strange sharing it. Also, feel free to ask any questions about my studio setup, supplies, or to share your own ideas on how to store your art supplies. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye!